Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 354 for the 2nd of August 2015. Richard Saunders here with you back in Sydney, Australia. Oh, the jet lag. The jet lag coming from California to Sydney is not so bad. Not so bad. I've been waking up at about 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 if I'm lucky, 4 o'clock, and then falling asleep despite my best efforts come 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the evening. It's not so bad. I can deal with that, and as the days go on, the jet lag gets a bit better and better. It's going from Sydney to California that's always a bit rough. Nevertheless, here I am back in Sydney. And I'm very glad to be back in Sydney because this Thursday, folks, at Sydney Skeptics in the Pub, Thursday the 6th of August, starting at 6 p.m, Crown Hotel, the corner of Elizabeth and Goulburn Streets in the city, near Museum Station, just head upstairs. It's the Skeptic Zone Live. Yes, join me, Stefan Soyka, Maynard, Joe Alabaster, Aran Sagev, and I'm delighted to say Heidi Robinson in person with a special pre-recorded message from Dr. Rachie. Skeptics in the Pub, the Skeptic Zone Live. I think it's going to be a great night, folks. Come and see the recording of a podcast. This podcast, as a matter of fact. For more information, go to meetup.com/AUST skeptics. And you should see all the information there. We'd love to see you there. What fun it's going to be. Haven't done a Skeptic Zone Live for a long time. But let's see what's coming up on the show this week. I speak to Michael Marshall. Again! Always very happy to speak to Michael Marshall from the Good Thinking Society in the UK. Wow, what an investigation they've completed just recently on palm readers, or a palm reader. Palm readers are very popular in the UK in many seaside towns, and the Good Thinking Society went along with a hidden camera, and what they discovered, folks, is, well, I'd like to say it's surprising. Sadly, it's not surprising, but it's startling nevertheless. Coming up at the top of the show, Michael Marshall from the Good Thinking Society joins us to tell us more about their investigation into palm readers. Are they genuine? Following that, it's a week in science from the Royal Institution of Australia, www.riaus.org.au, as we say every week, because it's a good place. I was there. When was I there? December last year. Wow, what a great time I had at the Royal Institution of Australia. If you're in Adelaide, folks, you're going to Adelaide, if you live in Adelaide, make sure you visit the Royal Institution of Australia. Adelaide, what a great place. And I'm so pleased that they give us every week a week in science. I always look forward to hearing the segment myself. Then to round off the show, well, an interesting bit, one from the archive, sort of. Now, back in 2009, I joined the Nonsense podcast with my friend Jason Hamiester. It's had an investigation into animal psychics. So I went along with Dr. Rachie, our friend Bastard Sheep, and Jason from the Nonsense podcast, and we sat there for a couple of hours and listened to an animal psychic, an animal communicator, a telepath, somebody who can talk to the animals, or so she claimed. And after we finished that up, we all went down to the Chinese restaurant, and that's where we pick up the action. Hear us give our thoughts and opinions on an animal psychic. Now, I'm playing this partly because it's a very interesting one from the archives. I haven't played on the Skeptic Zone before, although it would have been originally played on the Nonsense podcast. And it really does remind us all that it's important to go and see these things. Go to a Mind Buddy Wallet, go to a psychic show, go to a mystic fair. It's good to see these things firsthand. Oh, and just before we get into the show, don't forget the Australian Skeptics National Convention coming up, October the 16th to the 18th in Brisbane. Convention.brisbaneskeptics.org is the place you should go to find out more. What a lineup of top international and local skeptics, including Brian Schmidt, Joe Nickel, Eugenie Scott, Susan Gerbeck, The list goes on and on and on. And look out for various Skeptic Zone reporters while you're there. If we walk up to you with a microphone, don't run away. We're going to be talking more about the convention as it draws closer. But now it's time for me to run downstairs without tripping over the cat. Where is he? Fred! I think he's hiding under the cupboard at the moment. It's time for me to run downstairs, open up the cupboard, look for that microwave popcorn. Why not? Microwave popcorn. Now that's something I haven't had for a little while. Takes a couple of minutes to pop that. I'll do that. While I'm doing that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Joining me now on the line from Liverpool, as he does quite regularly these days, I think, it's Michael Marshall. Michael, I think we're going to have to make you almost an honorary Skeptic Zone reporter.
Well, why not? I'm on pretty much every other podcast there is out there. Why not add Skeptic Zone to the regular list too? But it's always a pleasure to speak to you, Richard.
Thank you. Why not? Why not indeed? Why not indeed? Now, the reason we've made contact with you this week is to chase up, follow up, discover more about this incredible series of videos you've put out on the Good Thinking Society at the Good Thinking Society's website. Now, this was an investigation into something that a lot of people might think is a bit mundane and a bit old hat: palm readers. What inspired this?
Well, I mean, to be honest, it was a bit of a whim, really. I mean, this is work that we've been doing since I started working for Good Thinking, pretty much. So I think it was probably around about April or May last year that I actually recorded the first of these videos, and we've been kind of distracted by other really important projects we had to be working on. So these kind of been on the to-do list for a while. But I happened to be in Blackpool, a seaside town in the UK, and as is the case with many seaside towns in the UK, the tradition is along the pier front you've got loads of little psychic booths. So I figured I'm newly a professional, full-time paid skeptic, and I should go out and investigate. So I had myself my little undercover camera, and I figured I'd go in and pop in and get my palm read by one of the family along Blackpool. It's the family of psychics who've been operating in Blackpool for decades. I mean, you look these people up and they go way, way back. So they're pretty well-established members or features of the waterfront. So I just popped in thinking, I'll see what happens if I just get a palm reading. And I think this is the thing for me, is that I'm a big believer in going to experience the stuff that's around you. So I figured, what happens? You can watch this palmist booth, and people will be going in there pretty regularly. So what happens actually inside the booth? What do you get told, and just how insightful is it? And that's what made me decide to go in and spend what I was expecting to be £10. But I mean, you've seen the first video. What struck me within seconds of being in there is just how much there was the hard sell in operation. You know, I said, how much is a reading? She said, it's £20. I said, okay. And I sat down and I said, right. And she said, okay, well, your one hand is £20, but your two hands plus your future is £30. And I say, well, I think I'll go for the £20 one. Well, I think you should go for the £30 one, because you've not been happy in your life, and I can tell you what's going wrong with your life if you pay the £30. You've got to speculate to accumulate, and immediately into the patter. So it was pretty clear pretty quickly that this was a very experienced operator, one way or another.
Yes, and having watched the videos now myself, I totally agree. No waste of time, no mucking about, as we might say. Straight into it, and straight into getting up front from you. And I imagine this works most of the time, that extra 10 quid or that extra 20 quid.
Well, that's it, really, yeah. And the thing is, you'd imagine for £30, so what's that, like $50, maybe something like that. I think it's more like 60 Australian dollars or something like that. Yeah, quite a lot. Oh, is it? Okay, I'm terrible with the exchange rate. I'm actually useless for it. So for your $60, I mean, you'd imagine you might get half an hour, 20 minutes of reading, and I think I got about 4 minutes of reading out of her, which just shows you what the hourly rate that you're able to turn over is. And I mean, you've seen it. I wasn't overly impressed. And we see the classic signs that you have with someone who looks like they might be cold reading, you know, asking a huge amount of questions. We decided to count up just how many questions she asked. And in the case, in the space of about 4 minutes of reading, she asked 21 questions, which is incredible because she didn't really offer anything else other than the questions, other than the remarkable insight that somebody in my life over the age of 70 is going to die within the next 18 months. Well, that's not the kind of thing you could just say to every single human being on the planet, and it'd be true.
Well, absolutely right. And it's something that I like to tell people. If you're going to see a psychic reading, or a palm reader in this case, or a tarot card reader, or whatever the case may be, record it and then count later on, go home and count the number of questions you are asked by the reader, which is exactly what you've done in this video. And it's sadly hilarious to see the numbers being racked up in quick succession of simply the number of questions that she was asking.
I think so. I mean, I always advise people to do the same. You know, if you go to have one of these readings, record it. And I always say to people, before you listen back to the recording, write down what you think happened. Write down what you think you were told and what information you were given, and then listen to see how that information comes up. And that's the other kind of key, really. But yeah, just seeing the questions kind of racking up. And there's the one bit where she's fishing so heavily that we put a little bell every time she asks a question. It's just a constant ringing of the bell. She says, and you've got a married man's hand. You've been married once before, haven't you? No. But you are living with someone? No. But you have lived with someone? No. But there is someone in your life? Yes. And isn't there an obstacle between you? So yes, if there wasn't an obstacle between us, we'd probably be living together at the point. Yeah, absolutely amazing.
It is. It's quite startling to see this. And just as a standalone piece, it's quite insightful. The way she comes up with the lines in quick succession. And when I saw the first video, of course, we're going to be discussing briefly all three, but we encourage people to go to the Good Thinking Society and watch them, and that'll details up soon. But it struck me when I was watching the very first video. Of course, it's sadly hilarious, all the questions that she asks, but just the way she fired her lines to you, I thought to myself, how many times has she said these lines before? Because they were almost like a rhythm, weren't they?
They were very rhythmic. I mean, she wasn't really kind of looking up an awful lot. She was just rolling out the same old lines of, you have been through what you wouldn't want to go through again, but it's a long lane with a turning. You know, at turning now. You know, it was very much kind of. It felt to me at the time, and it felt to Simon when I showed him, that it seemed a little bit like she might have been reciting this from memory rather than reading it on the spot. And we decided the best thing to do, as any good skeptic would do, we can't just say, oh, she was definitely reciting from the script. We've got to go back and gather evidence. So we decided to go back another time and bring 4 of my friends from the Merseyside Skeptic Society along and see what advice and what reading she would give to them. So we actually... One of the MSS board members and member of Skeptics with a K, phenomenal, brilliant person, Alice Howarth. She has health conditions. She has hypermobility syndrome, which is a genetic disorder. It's not going to go away. It's incredibly painful. But to look at her, you can't see it. It's an invisible disability. There's no physical symptoms except when she's bandaged up because she's dislocated something. So we sent Alice in, and what we said to Alice was her story was just talk about the symptoms that you actually have and how they make you feel and how frustrating they are and how scary they can be. The only thing that you're going to lie about is you're going to pretend you haven't got a diagnosis. So if you had a diagnosis, a year ago, we'll pretend that you're going in the day before you got that diagnosis. So it's all very, very true for how you were and very, very true for how lots of other people in your situation could be if they got the same symptoms, but they haven't been told what it is yet. And so she went in there talking about how, because people go to see psychics not just when it's a bit of fun, and some people go when it's a bit of fun, but others will go when there's something going on in their life that they're worried about. And it tends to be things like job insecurity, insecurity in your relationships, financial problems, health problems, things like that. it struck us that if people do go and see this psychic and get the same kind of treatment when they're talking about something serious, then they could end up in a position that was really quite damaging to them. They could be easily misled or convinced to do something that's not in their best interest just because they think this lady has a psychic ability that we would disagree that she has.
Absolutely. And here's somebody with doing her shtick, we might say, in this place, possibly giving somebody erroneous health advice, which is a very serious matter.
Well, that's exactly it. And you'll see from the videos, the things that she says to Alice are pretty terrible, really, because on the one hand, she's saying she's very dismissive of the idea of depression, that all of your problems, well, it's you're very depressed at the moment, and that's the reason why you're having all these things. But there's nothing wrong with you other than depression. There's nothing wrong with you at all, just deep depression. You'll be right as rain by the end of the year because there's nothing wrong with you at all, just a bit of depression. It's like, well, actually, depression is a serious thing, a very serious thing that you shouldn't take lightly. But also, there is something wrong with Alice. We know there's something wrong with Alice. She has a genetic disorder that isn't just going to go away. She can't wish it better. And to tell people that it's your attitude and your negative outlook on life that's keeping you in constant pain, and you can think yourself better. I mean, even if the person thinks that they're being comforting to say you can think yourself better and look on the bright side and everything's going to get better, people might think that that's being comforting. But when there's an underlying cause to it, you're not going to get better by changing your outlook to a more positive one. And at the end of that, you're going to feel even more frustrated, depressed. You're going to even potentially blame yourself because I was told that I can think myself out of this. So I mustn't be thinking hard enough. I mustn't be trying hard enough. And you can be in a position where you can get into quite a mire. And this is for someone, where Alice fortunately has a diagnosis and knows what's wrong with her and knows what she needs to do to kind of manage her pain, things like that. If you had those symptoms or you had other symptoms and you didn't know what was wrong with you, you might take this psychic's word and go away and not worry about anything, not go and see a doctor. And there could be something seriously wrong with you. I mean, there was in Alice's case, but she knows what that was. If you didn't have a diagnosis, it could be absolutely anything that's causing you to feel that way. And you've just been primed to go off and ignore any medical help and not seek any medical help necessarily, and just try and get on with things, and that could be really dangerous.
I couldn't agree more. And we see this not only with so-called psychics and palm readers and tarot card readers and their ilk, but this also really goes to the heart of a lot of what alt med's about and the quacks out there. We think about people who do applied kinesiology, muscle testing to discover if someone's got something wrong with their organs and so on. So it's a very interesting can of worms. This whole false or erroneous health advice or giving somebody solace when they actually should be just getting to a doctor and things like this. It's a very serious matter. The
other part of part two, of course, I mean, it's not just health advice, because that's what we decided. We'll send Alice in with this actual problem, but we also sent in another MSS board member, Laurie Phillips, and we told him, you just talk about how you have we invented a gambling problem, a financial problem, to show it's not just health advice that you get you can get erroneous advice for. So he went in there to say that he didn't have much money, he was worried about the future. Now, in that situation where he said, I'm down to my last money, I've had to borrow money, I'm struggling at the moment, you'd imagine anybody responsible would say, go and see someone who can actually help. They wouldn't try and take money off you. But instead, this psychic didn't even sell him the £20 reading or the £30 reading. She pushed him up to the £50 reading, knowing that he has no money at all. She charged him $100 so that he could have a full reading with a crystal ball. And the reading he got was astonishingly similar to the one that I paid £30 for. So I think he was taken for an extra £20 for what seemed to be pretty much the same thing, except towards the end when he says, Is my luck going to change? Are things going to get better? And she said, your luck's going to get better. Everything's going to get better. And he says, well, I gamble a lot. I've been entering tournaments, but should I pay to enter this big poker tournament so I can win a lot of money? And she said, how much money have you won in the past? He said, £1,000. She said, oh, no, you'll win a lot more than that. Don't change anything. Don't do anything different. You just carry on as you are, and you'll win a lot more than £1,000. Now, if he really had the gambling problems that he is very clearly presenting with, that is the worst possible advice, because you're telling somebody who's having to borrow money to pay gambling debts that what you're doing is the right thing. Carry on, and you'll win all that money back. You'll win a lot more. You're on the right track, and that's the kind of thing that leads people into a massive, massive hole as well.
Yeah, it really does. Sometimes they don't need much of a push, unfortunately, with their problem. But if they have somebody who they perceive as having mystical insight giving them this advice, then they're quite likely to do it, I would fear. So it really leads us to the third video, and I don't want to give too much away because I think it's very important that our listeners go to your website, go to the Good Thinking website, and look at the third video for themselves. We can allude to what happens. If I say that towards the beginning of our discussion we were talking about how we thought that this particular palm reader was more or less reciting lines, well, the third video brings it all home beautifully.
It does. Yeah, it was a nice opportunity for us to take stock of everything we found amongst the 5 readings we had in total. We had 5 readings in total. One of them didn't quite come off, so there's 4 that we include in the video. But yeah, once you take a step back and really assess the lie of the land, you see some interesting patterns going on. It's fair to say.
It's fair to say. Now, listeners, we certainly discuss a lot of websites and links and things on the Skeptic Zone, and I'll be linking to the Good Thinking Society in the show notes. But this is a series of videos that is well worth your time, and by the time you get to watch number 3, you'll be probably gobsmacked as I was in a sad sort of way. Not too surprised, but to see what this video has to offer is quite something. Michael, where can people go to look at these videos?
So if you go to goodthinkingsociety.org, they're all on there. And all the videos are up on YouTube. So if you go into YouTube and look for Good Thinking Investigates Palmistry, and you'll see there's 3 parts to it there, so you can see them all there. But yeah, goodthinkingsociety.org is where you can go to check out these videos, all the other work that we've been doing that I keep coming on the show to talk about. It's how you can support us if you want to make a small monthly donation. And yeah, if you find stuff on there that you think is worth shouting about, then we appreciate everywhere that we can spread some of the work we've been doing, the message that we have there, and a bit of awareness of what we're doing, I think.
Goodthinkingsociety.org. That's the place I think I'd head to watch the videos, because they're there quite easily for you to view. And as I say, listeners, I've seen many videos over my time, many skeptical videos, investigations, but part 3 of this series, I think, almost takes the cake. I think it'll become an instant classic, Michael Marshall, and well done indeed, well done.
Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you. I appreciate that. And
I'm sure we'll be catching up with you soon. The way the Good Thinking Society is generating good content for the rest of the world. You're certainly an example for us to follow. And I look forward to the very next time you're on the show, which at this rate might be in next week. Who knows?
Yes, I'll speak to you next week, Richard.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks a lot.
The cosmos is amazing.
World-famous astrophysicist Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson is touring Australia this August. Inspirational, smart and funny, he'll take you on his personal tour of the universe.
There are still more questions to be explored.
Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney and Canberra. Mark the date in your cosmic calendar for this once-in-a-lifetime experience. Tickets on sale now at thinkinc.org.au.
Welcome to A Week in Science from RiAus, bringing you the science you need to know. Isaac Asimov, Jules Verne and H.G. Wells are some of the classic names of science fiction. So let's take a look at how they thought the future was going to turn out. In 1865, Jules Verne seemingly predicted solar sails, massive sails that could propel a spacecraft using radiation from the sun. In 1864, the scientific community knew that light from the sun carried momentum and exerted forces on objects. In his book, From the Earth to the Moon, Jules extrapolated that knowledge to suggest that light could be used to push a spacecraft. In 2010, the Japanese Space Agency deployed and used a solar sail. He also seemingly predicted video conferencing, FaceTime and Skype. In his book, In the Year 2889, he predicted that telephones would have moving images, and he called this device the phonotelephone. In 1964, Isaac Asimov correctly predicted that by 2014, only robotic missions to Mars will have been accomplished, but that a human mission would be in the planning stages. Hello, Mars One. Asimov also predicted that by 2014, robots would exist, but would be neither common or very good. He also suggested that machines would have taken over many routine human jobs. H.G. Wells, best known for his work War of the Worlds, correctly predicted in 1913 the atomic bomb which could decimate cities. It would cause mushroom clouds and result in radioactive fallout. All of this 30 years before the Manhattan Project. They didn't get everything right, however, and here are 4 scientific predictions that proved a little wide of the mark. Asimov predicted in 1964 that by 2014, experimental nuclear fusion power plants would be in existence. Asimov also suggested that there would be a permanent moon colony and possibly deep-sea underwater colonies as well. Despite Jules Verne's surprisingly accurate descriptions of the Apollo moon landings, he did also suggest the capsule would be fired from a huge gun, which, if built in reality, would cause an unsurvivable acceleration of 1000 G. And Arthur C. Clarke predicted that with the rise of technology, no one would travel to work, but they would travel for pleasure. Unfortunately, that hasn't panned out. That's it from this A Week in Science. For more information on scientific predictions from science fiction, go to the RiAus website, riaus.org.au. Follow us on Twitter at RiAus and like us on Facebook. I'm Paul Willis, and we'll catch you here next week.
On maynard.com.au.
Because we really like to get people excited, I'm going to read from the Goods and Services Tax Act 1999, section 165-55.
He's like this all the time, people. It's a non-stop party. And here's some music to represent that.
That didn't really represent it, but it certainly represented something, Tim.
Well, it was confusing.
Men.
On maynard.com.au. Hey, you!
If I could talk to the animals. Yes, well, if I could talk to the animals, what would they say to me? That's a good question. I know what my cat would say. He would say, "Where's my food?" In 2009, the Nonsense podcast went to investigate an animal communicator, a pet psychic, somebody who claims that they have a special communication ability with animals of all sizes, all creatures great and small. And Jason from the Nonsense podcast was kind enough to invite members of the Skeptic Zone along for the fun. After it was all over, we repaired to a Chinese restaurant, and that's where we pick up our story.
Okay, so I've ordered two dishes, honey chicken and sizzling beef, sanctuary bao and vegetables.
Oh yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, and rice.
Watch out.
Well, I'd like to welcome everyone here to one of our first official Nonsense investigations. A group of us got together tonight to go and visit a telepathic communicator with animals. I should say non-human animals. And, yeah, we went along being rather sceptical, wanting to see if this woman could really do what she claimed, which was actually telepathically communicating with animals. On the panel tonight we have Dr. Rachie.
Hi, Jason.
We have the one and only Richard Saunders.
Hello, and where's my beef?
And we have James, or otherwise known as Bastard Sheep.
G'day.
So, well, we've just endured an hour and a half, I guess, of mind-mashing drivel. What was everyone's thoughts of our telepathic woman? What do you think she really has to say for herself?
I think you should tell your listeners where we are, actually. They might be curious.
Yes, we have just visited...
Abattoir, right?
That's it. We've after leaving our very highly vegan friends, we've popped into one of the local Chinese restaurants, the Chongqing Chinese restaurant in downtown Chinatown. So we're now going to be consuming amounts of meat.
Hang on, actually, Jason, I'm getting a message from the chicken. Is someone getting a message from the cow? Because I'm getting a message from the chicken.
Are you? I think the cow ran away with the chicken.
I think that's what the chicken's saying as well.
But getting back to it, yes, an hour and a half of a woman basically telling us of how good she is at telepathically communicating with cows, especially French cows for some reason, and
Canadian cows.
And Canadian cows, and her dog called Wayne.
Who is deaf and blind, so that's probably the only way she can communicate with him.
But I think you'd all agree with me. She sincerely believes she can communicate with animals. She wasn't some scammer. She really does think she can talk to the animals. And then we got into a conversation about how we could possibly test it, and as I actually predicted, because this sort of thing happens from time to time, you try to put to them the simplest possible test for them to demonstrate their telepathic communication with animals. And that's completely beyond them to do a very simple test.
Can I just backtrack a little bit though, Richard? That room was full of the most stupid I've experienced in quite some time. I mean, it was... Okay, maybe that's a little bit unfair. It was a mismatch of a bunch of people that none of them really seemed to fit. And there was a young girl who was very precocious and very excitable, who spoke with every second word was because she couldn't really compose a sentence very eloquently. There was a very unusual-looking maths guy who, when you did bring up some questions about the science, the potential to test it, he did side with you a little bit. And then there was a journalist, which I say with... Loosely a journalist, who I don't really know what he did, but he's writing books about cows and milk or something, and the big scam of, I don't know.
And he was taking notes the whole time and had a look over at them, entirely squiggles.
Really?
Obviously, he does a lot of auto handwriting from the animals too. It was telepathic messages, obviously, coming through. And he's just relaying them as the medium. Yeah.
Some nice little patterns there, and all these little symbols, things that you'd expect maybe in an Aztec tablet or something.
Oh, so he was getting messages from...
Maybe Wayne the dog could understand. Maybe.
Well, you know, the best thing about it was Wayne. He was very sweet. But the stories that the telepathic woman communicator told were really just anecdotes about how she, came across a cow that appeared to be a little bit stricken, and so she imagined that the cow told her it had lost its calf, and it was very upset, not only because it had lost its child, but because it knew the farmer was upset that it lost its calf.
The cow was concerned for the farmer.
Yes, that was the major concern of this cow, was for the farmer, not for itself. And then when you, Jason, posed a question to her at the end about, do cows understand this complicated human relationship involving marketing and business, she said, that's ridiculous, no. But she'd already told us 20 minutes earlier that this cow did understand the concept of business because it was upset for the farmer.
That's right, she did. She blatantly told us that the animal felt sorry for the farmer because this was a detriment to his business. Well, that's obviously a very complex understanding.
But all these animals she was talking about have a level of wisdom that we can't access or know.
Yes.
And they also know exactly what herb they need to fix their sore leg and things like that.
That's right, her dog actually told her what herb was required to fix the leg. That was remarkable.
The other thing I found interesting was she told an anecdote about how she went to the beach with her dog, and the dog is old and arthritic and blind and deaf, so he crept under someone else's sunshade because it was apparently 40 degrees. And then she told the story of how when she came out of the water, the owner of the sunshade approached the dog and said, look, we have to pack up the shade now, we have to go. And she cited this as an incredible case of the human understanding the dog, and people address her dog as if it's an individual. And to me, there's nothing unusual about that.
I talk to my cats all the time.
Yeah, I talk to domesticated animals as if they're human. There's nothing special about that. But
what are you going to do? Go up to a dog and say, woof, 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 woof,
well,
woof,
yeah.
woof?
A story I've heard countless times from people who get a dog for the first time is when they take it out walking, one of the things they love is so many people who would normally walk past them if they didn't have a pet, all of a sudden everybody comes up, approaches them, starts talking to them and the dog. It's just part of what happens to an animal when you've got an animal. People just come up, approach you, start talking.
That's right. We all like to humanise our pets, don't we? And feel like they are one of the family, not just an animal within the family, that they are part of the family. But
yeah, but then how can you explain this, skeptics? She also explained to us that she got a message from a cow. Or was it... Okay, there are a couple of stories. Let me first start with the pig. Let me start with the pig one. There was a lot of calf stuff and cow stuff, but she had an experience when she was doing some work for Peter. And she was rescuing a pig, and as the pig was apparently dying, she was lying next to it in the van, and it told her to go to some certain town in Australia where there was a piggery that needed her assistance. And she'd never heard of this town, but she processed this information and brought it into her conscious thought. And then when she got home, she looked up this town, and it was a town, and there was one of the worst piggeries in the country. And, oh my God. So, how do you explain that?
Proof positive. I give up.
Yeah, she had some pretty extremes, and there was a lot of underlying, we were talking about this earlier, a lot of underlying vegan thoughts, anti-meat. They really were, I guess, seemed like a...
Well, it was animal liberation. That's to be expected, I guess.
Well, Jason, there was also... I came to this event tonight at your invitation, and whilst I appreciate the offer, I was in the office for no more than 5 minutes when I noticed on the bookshelf a video called Vaccination, the Hidden Truth. And I think I audibly did squeal a bit, didn't I?
You did.
And then I investigated it at the end, and it was our friends Isaac Golden and Vera Schreibner, who we know very well as anti-vaccinationists. So it seems to me that perhaps it's possible that these people subscribe to all kinds of extreme beliefs, not just animal liberation.
I think you're right. I mean, the extreme end of animal liberation would be in with the conspiracy theories and the anti-vaxxers, I'm sure. It sort of goes along... I didn't know this before, but I wonder if what people out there with a genuine interest in animal welfare would think of their money going to fund somebody who talks to calves.
Well, that's an interesting point. And the other thing that Jason and I were discussing earlier was there was an underlying tone of animal cruelty in terms of experiments.
Yeah.
So a couple of times it was raised about chimps or apes that had been tortured and then were released to their carers, and they told their carers about the horrible things that they'd been through. Of course, that's not humans putting their perception onto an animal at all, is it, Jason?
No, of course not.
And, you know, vivisection ceased in the 1970s. It doesn't happen anymore. There are so many rules in terms of animal ethics for what you can do as a scientist, and these things are followed and you're checked up on, and they're policed really strictly. We don't take chimps and put them in the lab and poke them in the eyes with mascara and then let them out in the middle of the night. It's ridiculous. These people are living in the 1970s. And you're right, this woman's apparently travelling the globe writing a book about what cows are telling her.
Through Cows' Eyes. Her book's going to be called Through Cows' Eyes. But to travel the globe and do all these things requires money. And again, I just wonder if people with good hearts who are really interested in animal welfare, as we all should be, would think about their donation checks going to someone who has telepathic messages from piggies.
I suppose it's a little bit like, you know, people giving their money to the Australian Vaccination Network and not knowing that they're HIV deniers, I suppose, you know. Yeah. Sorry, I had to get that in.
That's okay, you're allowed, Dr. Rachie.
What did you think of it?
Oh, look, I guess from the offset I knew that she wouldn't do anything that would really help us to validate anything. I was really interested when we started talking about the process of actually perhaps putting forward a test. Yeah. That was quite interesting, but we all saw the way she stepped around it, and you know, she always had some sort of woo-woo way of covering any sort of testable message. And we had so many things where she actually did say a certain piece of evidence and it could be validated, but there was never any more than just an anecdote. There was nothing there substantial. I think we all sort of wanted to see her actually talking to her dog in an identifiable way, but there was none of that. So I think I'm a little disappointed.
Talking about non-stop conversations with animals, a lot of back and forth. The next moment she's just saying, well, it doesn't really work like that. It only happens occasionally, often not when expected. can't really be tested that reliably.
Yeah, because on that, I asked her, well, then you must be overwhelmed with messages from animals that are in distress or just want to have a chat. You know, how do you just select the messages that you want to deal with? And she said, oh, well, you know, when I go into situations where I know there's going to be distress, I close that off. Well, how's that even going to work? She says that she's trying to help animals, but when she goes into a battery farm, she doesn't listen to all the hens because she's only there to talk to an individual chicken.
It's like walking away from a child you know is being abused.
Yeah.
Like, you don't just walk away and close your eyes and ears to it and deny it.
That's what she said, right?
Yeah, she did.
Honestly, this was a little adventure into the mindset of the believer tonight, I think, more than anything.
Yeah, they fully personify animals a lot more than what I originally thought. Like, I knew these people really humanise animals to a degree, but tonight was just a demonstration of just how much stupid there is out there. It was
from the very start, the moment she started talking right through to the very end, all the entire thing sounded like to me was she's reading the animal's body language. This is how most animals communicate. They can't communicate verbally, so they communicate with each other through body language, how they act, how they behave. And that's all she was reading. She just thought it was something else entirely.
Oh, and just asserting, putting on top of that memories to get distorted, and anything that happens, oh, that must be the psychic reason it happened. It was just getting silly.
Well, we've just had some piggy turn up on the table here at the restaurant.
Look at the piggy. Oh, has anyone checked it spiritually yet, if it's cleansed, or...
I don't know.
Do we know if it's safe? Well, I guess we can...
Well, I've got it right up to my ear and I can't hear it saying anything, so I guess it's fine.
It's telepathically. It's the telepathic message.
Oh, sorry. It's very much
Well, I think we should hoe into our noms, and I'd like to thank you all for coming along tonight and enjoying this wonderful experience with me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Our friends down at the Canberra Skeptics. Canberra, the ACT, the Australian Capital Territory. Oh, there's been a lot happening there in the last couple of weeks, I can tell you. For those of you who follow Australian politics. But let's not think about politics right now. On the 23rd of August at 1 p.m. at King O'Malley's Irish Pub, which is right in the centre of the city there, you can see a free screening of An Honest Liar, the story of James Randi. Wow, this sounds too good to be missed, actually. A free screening of An Honest Liar in an Irish pub, a couple of beers, a burger or two, and An Honest Liar with James Randi. Sounds like the deal to me. Go to canberraskeptics.org.au for more information. And another one to set in your diary for the Canberra Skeptics is a free talk, The Science and Pseudoscience of Allergy, by Dr. Katrina Randall. And she's got more letters after her name than can fit into the alphabet. Thursday, the 17th of September, from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at the Daily Chronicle Room, East Hotel, 69 Canberra Avenue, Kingston. Admission is free, and of course, for more information about this and all sorts of things the Canberra Skeptics are doing, go to canberraskeptics.org.au. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone, and I'm looking forward to meeting you, Sydney-siders, at Sydney Skeptics in the pub for the Skeptic Zone Live this Thursday, the 6th of August, at the Crown Hotel. What fun that'll be. What fun. I can't wait for that. That's great. And I look forward to also meeting you if you're coming to the Australian Skeptics National Convention a bit later in the year in October. And thank you again to all those lovely people who came up to me during the amazing meeting a couple of weeks ago in Las Vegas. So many people from all around the world. What a great event it was. Busy. I was busy as ever. I'm always busy at the amazing meeting. But it was so nice to see people who came up to the Skeptic Zone table or just had a quiet word with me here and there. Lots of fans passing on their best wishes to me and the whole team. So thanks very much again. Next week's show, number 355 will be the recording of the live event we're having at Skeptics in the Pub. You know what? I think I'll probably try and periscope that as we're doing it. Those people who follow the Skeptic Zone on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, when we start that, I'll see what I can do. I'll see if I can rig up something to periscope that live so you can enjoy that as it's happening, and maybe you can send in questions. Keep an eye out for that anyway. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders and Fred the Cat, who is not here. Oh well, probably out looking for a pet psychic, signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation.